Welcome back to the Budding Author podcast with me, your host, Simon Ward. What a wonderful channel this is. We talk to authors about their writing journey, pick up some excellent tips, as well as some great stories of how they got there. Today, we have a very special guest and a local guest to me from the West Midlands. Miranda Dickinson is a 6 times Sunday Times bestseller. And we say hello to Miranda. Hello.
Hello, Simon. Lovely to see you.
Thanks for coming on the show. First and foremost, similar to me, I think you have ideas and stories in your head all the time. But what first got you into writing?
I think it's because I grew up in a house with lots of stories. So my mum and dad were both avid readers. I got taken to the library kind of as soon as I could walk, really, over to Kingswinford Library, which is in the lovely Black Country. And there were always stories around. And so I think I kind of just picked them up from people that were around me. I think coming from the Black Country as well, you stand in a supermarket queue for 5 minutes and somebody turns around and tells you their life story. So I think I just had a really rich inheritance of stories all around me. So it just felt really natural to want to write stories. So I asked my mum when I was 5, if I wrote a story, would they put it on the shelves of Kingswinford Library? And Kingswinford Library at the time was kind of like someone's front room. It was really tiny. It's lovely now, very posh. But it was kind of very small. But to little 5-year-old me, it was a palace of dreams. And I just thought, if I write a story, like, forget your Booker Prizes and your Oscars and all of those. If I could have a book,
that's it.
Kingswinford Library, I would be absolutely sorted. So that's where it began. And it's funny because I think, like, I'm a mom now and like my daughter's 12, but when she was 5, she'd say things. 1 minute she wanted to be a unicorn, the next minute she wanted to be a fighter pilot, the next minute she wanted to run a cafe. And so you kind of go, yeah, that's okay if you work really hard and you do what you want to do. And so I think my mom said something similar to that, but it sowed a seed, I think, that just then became something that underpinned the rest of my life, really. This idea of creating a story for other people to read. I think that's where it originally came from.
So with the way your life developed with the love of stories, at what point are you working full time as a writer now? I understand, yeah.
I am doing, yes.
What were you doing before, and when was the crossover period where you thought, hang on, I can do this full time now? What was that situation?
Well, I had published 5 Sunday Times best-selling novels before I dared to give up my job. And I think even at the time, people were like, oh, now you've got a book deal, are you going to give up your job? Well, you don't, because when you get a book deal at the start of the year and your book comes out at the end of the year, you might not get paid till the following year. So it's that sort of thing. And I think I talk to I work with a lot of new writers who instantly think the moment they want to give up everything they're doing and just focus on writing. And I understand that completely, but honestly, having a job and having a bit of security and then having that money to underpin you so you're not worried about money while you're writing is a huge thing. So I worked in all manner of, I have a load of crazy jobs that I have done in my life. I've been a tour guide at a nuclear power station. I was a copywriter for a political party I don't vote for. I wrote food trend reports for a food company, knowing really not an awful lot about food trends, but just sort of being good at research and finding that out. So I did all kinds of different jobs. But at the time when I got offered my book deal, I was working 3 jobs because I just lost my job working for the political party. Don't work for politicians, they're rubbish. But working for a political party that I didn't vote for. My entire print design unit got made redundant, and the day that I was walking out with my cardboard box and the little stolen stapler, because of course you do, I had an email from the publisher saying, we'd like to read the rest of your books. I'd sent in, they'd read the first few chapters of my book. So it's really funny because it wasn't, people say, oh, did you have a plan? Not really, no, I kind of fell into it and then just didn't dare give up my job until I could do that. So at the time that my first book came out, I was working 2 days a week writing food trend reports. I was working a day a week in a cafe in Bridgnorth. I was covering singing lessons for a friend at Wolverhampton Grammar School that was only for like a few months. So it was literally just picking up bits of job. But I think I've always had more than one job, and so writing kind of fit really well into that, you know. So
sort of
yes.
biding your time until you got to your niche that you were content with.
Yeah, and I think as well, like feeling confident to do that because of the way that it happened to me. It was so apparently random. I mean, I worked really hard to get the books out, but having the break the way that I did, it was not the way that I'd planned it. It wasn't what I expected. So I think it took a while to just go, I can rest my mortgage on this. And I think even when I went full time, I had about 4 months worth of money saved. So it wasn't like, oh, I'm a multimillionaire now.
Still a scary step, isn't it?
Very scary.
You were picked up by HarperCollins through Orthonomy, weren't you? Tell us about Orthonomy.
So Orthonomy was kind of like a forerunner of Wattpad, and it was done by it was put up by HarperCollins, who are one of the big 5 publishers, well, in the world, but particularly in the UK. And the idea was it was kind of they called it a digital slush pile, which doesn't sound glamorous at all. But the idea was that you could upload what you've been writing. As long as you had 10,000 words, it could be visible to other people, and then other people could go on and read what you posted, and they kind of voted for the ones that they liked the best, and then the top 5 got not a book contract, but a review, sort of advice from an editor at HarperCollins. Well, I didn't get anywhere near the top 5. I think I made sub 100, and I thought that was it. I'd arrived. But editors used it to kind of look and see what was out there, and if there was something that was interesting, they'd call it in, which is what happened in my case. So it was all like, so random. But I put it on there initially because I just didn't know any other writers and wanted to get a bit of feedback, because it's always something. I think you get to a stage of your writing where you then feel ready to show people. And I was at that stage of thinking, I don't know if I'm doing this right. It feels okay, but I'm not sure. And so it just so happened that at the point when I was showing people, an editor from Avon, which is part of HarperCollins, was looking, and that's where I got my book deal from. So it was all very, very kind of haphazard and serendipitous.
So how long had you been writing before that happened? Because it's sort of quite early in your journey, really.
Yeah, well, no, I've been writing a long time at this point. So I wrote all the way through my teens. I studied drama at university, and even though I told myself I wasn't writing, I was still writing scripts and plays and all sorts of things like that. I started writing what became my first novel in 1999, and it was signed by HarperCollins in 2009. So it was a really long time.
Fairy Tale of New York, wasn't it? Yeah.
Fairy Tale of New York, yes. So it wasn't the overnight success that everybody said it was. It was like 10 years in the making, but that was just finding the confidence, finding the story, writing it when I got home from work, editing it to within an inch of its life, which I now know is like that was what was holding me back. I think was just the confidence thing. But yes, it was 10 years really from that initial sentence that I wrote down that I thought, oh, I quite like that. To signing, to seeing the book coming out, signing a deal with HarperCollins, and then seeing the book coming out in the November of 2009. So it was a really long. I call it an apprenticeship, but I think that's a good thing, because I think the only way to learn how to write a novel is to write a novel and keep writing a novel. And you can read all the books on it, you can go on all the courses, but actually sitting down and getting words out, whether it's on paper or on a computer, however you do it, is the best training there is. And so it just took me a really long time to get to that point where there was a story ready to go out.
The say with your first book is always going to be awful. That's what people say. But obviously not in your case. I think from my point of view, my first novel took 4 years.
Yeah.
But I've gone back and re-edited different situations. It was a bit too steamy, really, for general public. I think sort of changed it round. It's difficult balance, I think. Were you always thinking about where you were targeting it as a book, or you just writing the story?
No, it started off as a story. I wanted to write a story that felt like the romantic comedies that I loved, because this was in the 90s. So you had things like Sleepless in Seattle, You've Got Mail, While You Were Sleeping, a real golden age. Nora Ephron's brilliant stuff. and I loved watching those films. And I thought, I wonder if I can write something that feels like that. It didn't occur to me for years that I was writing a novel until one day I worked out how to, this is a long time ago, I worked out how to do a word count and realized I had 60,000 words. And I thought, that's like a novel, that's heading towards a novel. I was really completely dim about the whole thing. It was just a story that I wrote to entertain myself. And I still think, like, even now, I have, you know, deadlines, and I've got books that are contracted and all of that stuff. If I don't write that first draft for myself, I might as well just not bother. I don't think of the market. I don't think of who's going to read it. I kind of think if I'm enjoying it, somebody else might as well. And that's always been the way, even with everything that I know now, 17 years on, still doing it, which is amazing. But every time I sit down for a first draft, it's just mine. And it's me. You know, Sir Terry Pratchett said, first draft of anything is you telling yourself the story. And it's precious and it's wonderful. It's messy but you know that you can go back and edit it. So I didn't have a master plan at all.
I'm fully behind that. I think my lack of success I put down to the fact that I don't write to market, and I'm just writing stories that come into my head. I get very frustrated with reading when you're reading a novel you've enjoyed, and then you read another one. It's like, hang on, this is the same story.
Yeah, and unfortunately, publishing is very, especially now, is really risk averse, and it's a little bit like if you like something on Instagram, then Instagram will show you 7 identical things that are like it. It's a bit like that, where they go, that was popular. And the thing about that I've learned about publishing really is that they don't really know what's going to be popular. Something will take off. I mean, if you look at 50 Shades of Grey, I use it all the time because obviously it was not something that somebody sat down in a meeting at a publisher's and went, we're going to make this big. Like, it was a word of mouth hit. And I think readers ultimately decide, it's just if they can find access to it, I think they decide. And then publishing goes, right, we need 7 more like it. So that's when you come up with books that are really similar. I think also sometimes there's just sort of something in the air, and people will write books that have a similar kind of feel because of what else is happening in the world. So I think we had a lot of crime novels turn up. Apparently, crime reading figures really soar when times are bad or the news is scary, and so people want something that they can see, you know, resolved at the end, and like everything being okay at the end and that kind of thing. And the same thing with romantic comedy, which is kind of what I started off writing. It's when people need reassurance and they need nostalgia and they need escape from everything that's going on. So I think it's difficult because I think if you write to market, the moment, even if you write your book really fast, the market will have moved on. The market doesn't really know what it wants.
I think that you can tell me what's on trend now, but by the time I've got it done, it's going to be like 3 years, and it'll be somebody else's game, won't it?
Absolutely. Well, I had this last year. I wrote the first book of what I hoped was going to be a new crime series. And at the time, people were saying, we want ghost stories, we want supernatural stuff. And so I wrote a crime drama where there is a main character who is a detective sergeant. So she's a detective in a little local force down in Cornwall, and she can see ghosts. So that was, I thought, brilliant. This is going to really go. It had 25 straight no's, because by the point that they were signing that, they were already looking a year ahead and it was something different. Now, it doesn't mean to say that at some point someone will go, hang on a minute, we need a ghost police procedural thing. Oh, we read one, and it gets another time. And I found that to be the case. Sometimes a book comes out and just there are loads of slam doors, and then 18 months sometimes later you send it out again and they go, this is brilliant, this is exactly what we want, because it's very cyclical. But I think the bottom line for a writer, you have no control over that. And that's been the hardest thing, I think, as a writer to learn, because you think it's perfect, it's brilliant, it's going to go out. But you just learn that the only thing you have control over is the story. You know, if you can make that the best it can be, eventually there will be a time where it finds writers. It's just sometimes a bit of a long game.
Does the publisher say, oh, Miranda, can you write something about this? And are they doing that?
Not always. Sometimes early on in my career, so the first book was Fairy Tale of New York. The second book, they said, can you get Venice into it? And I was like, I'd had an idea already. And I'm like, okay, I can get it in, but I've never been. So I'm not sure how this is going to happen.
That's a good expense you can put in.
It is a good excuse. Sometimes, I mean, you're getting this more now with things that they call IP projects. So a publisher or an editor will come up with a kind of a book blurb idea, really, really simple 1 or 2 line idea for a book, and they will then hire a writer to write it.
Okay.
So that's happening now. So I have a book coming out in August that's called If You've Got It, Haunt It. And that was a 1 line idea from my editor, who then looked for someone to write it. And so I wrote a sample. She really liked it. But then I kind of went off on my own. It's not really. It kind of went off a long way. It was a very, very easy brief. But a lot of publishing will do that now. So that's another way in, actually. If you can kind of write something really well, and they're not telling you what to write, it's more that they almost give you what would be the blurb on the back of the book.
Yeah,
and then you have to make a story fit it, which, because I was a copywriter in like before I was published, that appeals to me, because I used to get a brief. They'd say, right, we need 200 words on Japanese snacks or whatever, and then I would write the best 200 words that I could find on Japanese snacks. So there is that kind of thing that's happening more now. And again, it's just it's a little way in that you can have that bypasses this whole market thing, because if the publishers decided that's what they want to do, then they've already put everything in place and they know that it's what they want. That's quite a new thing, but I think you're seeing it more of it nowadays.
With my writing, and I think it's probably similar with yourself, the characters, once you've sort of got into the character then writes the book for you.
Oh,
and
yes.
The character takes control of the story. I'm sure you feel the same with that.
Absolutely. Have you had that happen where a character that has sort of made a bigger role for themselves?
I lost complete control of the book. It was just being written for me by my characters. I
was worried about that with my first book. There was a character called Ed who was only supposed to be light relief. He was meant to be the assistant. Is in New York florist shop is where it's set. And he was meant to be kind of like the co-designer, partner in crime, best mate of the main female protagonist. He wasn't supposed to do anything other than turn up and be kind of wry and funny at the times when she needed it. By the end of the first chapter that he'd appeared at, he decided he was the main character. And then suddenly I got a love triangle that I hadn't planned at all. So I'd got another person that my main female character was going to meet. And they were supposed to be chatting, and then Ed just decided he was going to walk in, and he literally took over. It was like, I can't not write about this person. But I was panicked when that happened first, because I didn't know that could happen. But I love it when they do it now. And sometimes I write, because I always have a large cast of characters. I always have kind of cameo roles. So this is my excuse for this, is that when it gets made into a film, people like Robert De Niro can just come up and say, can I play that character? Yeah, pop in. That's my thing. But also it's because sometimes when I get bored, I don't know which character to do the viewpoint of. Having somebody else come in and just getting their perspective is really cool, as long as it serves the story.
Yeah.
But sometimes there are side characters in there that I feel like I could write a whole series about afterwards. Like, they're kind of going, well, I've got a few lines, but really next time you need to be using me more. So, but I think that's the fun of writing.
On sort of advice I've got and that sort of thing was not to have too many characters. So I think you sort of will get to the position where it's sort of like, I've introduced a character, and the way I deal with it is, if they're not going to be a main character, I won't give them particularly much of a description. And if I've described them in more detail, that would sort of tell people that they're going to be more key to the story.
I think it's whatever serves the story. So in my books, so I write romantic comedy as Miranda Dickinson, and I write crime as MJ White. In my MJ White books, they are a series, whereas my Miranda Dickinson ones generally are standalone, although sometimes there's some crossover, but essentially they're standalone stories. In my police procedural, you have a detective unit, so you have these characters that are there every single time. What fascinates me about crime things are the people behind the crime, people that are brought in from the community, the people who are solving the issues, but also their life doesn't stop because a murder's happened. So you get to see all their other things. The one bit of advice I would give, because I know I've heard this before, people say, like, you can only have 3 characters, you only have 4 characters. As long as they are serving the story, as long as they are showing you something about your main characters that maybe your main characters don't realize that they show other people, as long as if you give them the camera, they're keeping it on the main story, I think it's fine. I think the only time you're going to rein them in is if their story suddenly becomes more exciting to write than the main character. Then I think you need to look at kind of the balance of everything.
That can
But
be
I
a
think
side book then.
Yeah, a side, but also as long as they serve the story. Sometimes their lives can show you something about a character, either a positive or a negative thing. Sometimes their interactions with the character reveal something to your readers about that character that's really important to the story. So as long as everything serves the story, that's what I keep coming back to. If it serves the story, it's fine. If it looks like it's taking, like, they're coming in and nicking your readers and taking them off somewhere else, then you need to rein them in a little bit, I think.
Yeah. I think with the key parts of the story, at what point do you put a twist in? Is that something that you'll... Because like I was talking to... I had a great interview with J.D. Barker that wrote the prequel to Dracula.
Yeah.
And he was talking about he sort of write the story and then he'd go back in and put twists in and that sort of stuff.
You can do it that way. I had to do that with my first MJ White novel. I had to do that because I'd written it not really knowing what I was doing. And it's, again, that was another 10-year thing. So about me in 10 years writing a first book. But I had to go back and put extra twists in because there weren't enough. Now I plan the twist before I write. Yeah. So I know that particularly with a thriller, although I have done this in romantic comedy as well, I've put more twists in my romantic comedy since I've been writing crime. So it does go into the other side. But yeah, in a thriller, because it's quite linear, you start at the beginning and you've got the end, and you need a middle section. So I will always put a twist around about halfway through the book. Yeah. Although the one that I'm writing now has about 7 twists. So there's the main one in the middle, and then it keeps twisting because I want to see how many I can get in.
With rom-coms, they are quite sort of traditional and sort of expected, isn't it? Sort of like, oh, they don't get on to start with.
Yeah.
Together, then they have a misunderstanding and that sort of stuff. Do you stick to that formula, or do you sort of mess that up a little bit?
I do sometimes mix it up a bit. I think with romantic comedy, you know where it's going. It's about the journey and how they get there. Yeah, so then you can have fun. I remember that I watched an interview with Tony Jordan, who has written loads of BBC drama, and he's like really knows what he's doing, and he's brilliant. And he said basically, he said he gets asked to talk about story structure, and he said it would be over in 5 minutes because it's literally all your characters start here. This is where they want to get to, and then you just put lots of obstacles in their way, and that's basically it. Okay. And I think that's where the fun comes, really, that you can kind of twist it a little bit. I did bump off an old couple in Fairy Tale of New York, which I'm not sure I would get away with now.
You have to be careful about triggers now, don't you?
It's a beautiful, tragic story, but I think even now people are going, it doesn't fit tropes. I think you can always put things in that don't necessarily fit a formula. Yeah. But if they serve the story, they don't feel out of place, they don't feel forced. I don't tend to start off going, right, I want to write an enemies to lovers, grumpy sunshine, person next door, forced proximity, or whatever it is. I don't tend to think that. It's more that I just go, oh, I could put them together and they get locked in somewhere. That would be, then what would happen to them? But it's all about the characters in the story. It's not about box ticking, because I think then that feels forced.
Yeah, I think we have to be careful, as say, with triggers and that sort of thing. The typical romance, at the end of the romance, I suppose it's from a bloke's mentality, I guess. When they finally get together, it seems to fade to black, before they got to the juicy stuff. But I don't know.
It depends what you write, because there are people that write non-fade to black scenes incredibly well. I am not one of those people. Because I think because I'm a comedy writer at heart, I can't write it with a straight face. So we do pan away. You know what they're at it. You know, it's fine. You know what they're doing, and it's fine. For me, it's about that journey of how they get together. And so my comedies will always finish at the point when they've overcome all their obstacles and they're together. But I mean, I think every writer's different, and there's so many different, particularly when it comes to romantic comedies, there's so many different flavors now because there's been such an explosion of it in the last few years. There are people who absolutely leave it in. You no doubt whatsoever what is happening because they keep you in the room with all the lights on and it's fine. I tend to pan away because I kind of feel like just let them get on with it. But it's just down to personal preference and what you feel your strengths are as a writer. So I don't think anyone should feel they have to put things in or they don't have to put things in. It's what serves the story. So if it feels right, I think it naturally flows in the story. It's just trusting yourself when you write it, I think.
I think from my point of view, because I'm a sort of a detailed guy, when I got to scenes like that, I was being too detailed. So I went back and sort of stripped it back a little bit. And then 12 months later, I looked at it. I'm thinking, I thought I'd strip this back.
It's always the way.
What I want to talk to you about with comedy, I do some stand-up comedy myself.
Oh, brilliant.
Judging your comedy and the reactions to the audience, comedy is very much about sort of gauging the responses. So
Yes.
as writing comedy, that must be really tough. How do you know it's going to hit?
If it makes me laugh, I think it'll make other people laugh. I think it's the only litmus test I've got. I haven't been brave enough to do stand up, but obviously I do author talks, and you need to get people laughing because that's a long time to listen to an author droning on. I have done them where it's just been dead silence in the room, but there's a part of me that like secretly really loves that because it's a challenge. It's like, right, I'm going to get a smile out of you. If it kills me, I'm going to do it. I think it's about just finding the commonality, finding things. I'm sure that you find this in your stand-up as well. Finding things that everyone goes, you can see people nudging each other going, oh, we've done that. Yeah, we've done that. Yeah. And I think a lot of my comedy is very observational. So I love, like my absolute heroine is Victoria Wood. So she was the first person that I saw that I realised that women were allowed to be funny. And people like her, people like Tracy Ullman, where you just go, oh, that's so funny. Yes, I've seen people like that and those characters. And the humour is in the interactions. It's not necessarily punchline, or like trying to land a joke. It's about making it. It's because life is quite, some of the things that we do, they are quite daft, aren't they? If you actually wrote it down, why are we doing this? A bit like, if you got a kettle and the switch is broken, so the only way that you can keep it going is to keep your finger on it and you burn your finger, but it's still, because it still works, you don't throw it away. Like that sort of thing, little tiny details like that amuses me. So that's what my comedy is. It isn't kind of like roll up, I'm going to tell you a joke, everybody. I like it when you're laughing one minute and you're crying the next. So it's always about the emotion and how it makes you feel when you read it. So when I'm writing it, even though I know the first draft is really messy and I actually love that, if it makes me laugh, if there are bits that I go back to, I love that made me laugh so much, then I think that's the only litmus test I've got. So that's kind of what I do, follow my gut really on it.
And I suppose you get feedback from proofreaders and that sort of stuff. Before I get on to proofreaders and that sort of stuff, I'm wary of time. I bet you're a big fan of Lee Mack, aren't you?
I do like Lee Mack, yes, for the same reason, because it's the characters. The characters that get me. But I love Eddie Izzard as well because it's just funny. It's life and it's hilarious and absurd and it's funny. So those kind of observational writers, in the same way that I love Nora Ephron. Nora Ephron is an absolutely brilliant example of somebody who's just sat in a cafe and watched people and seen how they interact and written that down. And so that for me is that's what interests me. And I think also coming from this part of the world, we have a sense of humor in the West Midlands that you don't really find anywhere else. So again, I think it's that inheritance that I've got that if it makes me laugh, I just think it'll make other people laugh as well.
Yeah. Yes, I'll say I've always loved comedy, and from being in a corporate environment, now I'm away from that. I can just let free and can say what I like, really. As far as I want to, just before we finish, I just want to talk about proofreaders and that.
Yes.
What have you got a set people who do your proofreading and that sort of stuff, or not?
Well, actually, I have just finished going through the proof of If You've Got It Haunted, which is my ghosty romantic comedy that's coming out. I had to read it overnight because it's going to print tomorrow. Oh. So if I've made coherent answers in this podcast, that I've done really well. So there is always somebody because I work with publishers, they will always have somebody who proofreads for you. But I was a proofreader when I was a copywriter, so I do it myself as well because I know that things will have got missed and I go through it again. And that's actually really lovely because it's kind of the last time you get to see it before it gets published. So
Yeah.
there's a really lovely moment where you just sit with your book and it's looking the way it's going to look when it goes out and all of that stuff. So yeah, and it varies from different publishers. Some publishers will ask you to do it and then I'll get somebody to check it just before it goes. This publisher is a new publisher that I'm working with, and so they've sent it back to me. I don't normally see the version 2. There's normally my corrections and the proofreaders' corrections, and then it goes to print. So it's been lovely to see it just before it goes. But yeah, it's always good to get somebody else to look over it, someone you trust, to look over it. Another thing that I found that's really helpful is to print it out, even though it will probably kill your printer. Print it out and read it on paper.
I generally have a read aloud
Yes.
through work. Do read aloud, and then I'll have a read through myself, read it aloud myself. And
it's always the best way to find errors is to read it aloud. And my family think it's hilarious because I do all the voices and everything. Because why not? That's what you read it for, right?
I use Scriberfile as well. I don't know if you're familiar with Scriberfile.
I haven't. No, I don't know about that.
Scriberfile is really good. I've got a completely different show on that. Dylan West introduced me to Scriberfile. I absolutely love it. And you submit work for review, and they'll review your work and send notes back and that sort of stuff. And then you do stuff with theirs. But it's a big worldwide community.
Oh, that's really nice. I like that.
You don't directly know the people. When I've been in writing groups and you know the people and you're looking at the same people's work all the time, you're not so honest as perhaps you would be because you know they're always next. But with Scriberfile, it's sort of it's somewhat different and you don't know the people, so that's good. What I felt a good point with mine was the last novel I did, The Healer. As soon as I put the next episode up, next chapter up for people to look, the same people were grabbing it again and again because they wanted
it's a good sign. You're actually getting your audience. That's great.
But I'm doing nowhere near as good as you though. Miranda, this has been absolute pleasure. I think we'll have you on again. I think and
anytime.
We're going to be careful of timing, haven't we? So it's been absolutely super. Wish you very well. I haven't read Fairy Tale of New York yet, so that is going to be my next on my read list.
Excellent, thank you very much.
And that's good. But yeah, thanks very much for joining us. The Budding Author Podcast on YouTube, Spotify, all kinds of places. Thanks for watching. Cheers. There we go. That's all right.